I don't know if I'll survive long enough to finish telling you this, but if you ever find yourself in the Appalachian woods, don't stay after dark. I grew up hearing stories about these mountains. Hunters swore the forest was alive in ways it shouldn't be, that sometimes the silence was so thick it pressed on your chest, and sometimes, if you listened close enough, the silence wasn't silence at all. But I never believed them. To me, the Appalachians were just endless trees, trails, and the occasional deer. Last fall, I decided to take a solo trip into the mountains. I wanted to disconnect, to prove to myself that I wasn't afraid of the superstitions old folks whispered about. The cabin I rented was a crooked little shack, barely standing, tucked between pines that blotted out most of the sky. The smell of damp wood and mildew hit me the second I stepped inside. That first night, I noticed how different the forest felt here. Usually, you hear crickets, owls, maybe a distant coyote, but here, it was as if the world held its breath. I told myself it was just the altitude, the thickness of the trees. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening. On the second day, I hiked deeper along an unmarked path. The soil was soft and uneven, covered in roots like veins twisting just beneath the surface. The deeper I went, the stranger it became. I found claw marks etched into the bark of trees, too high for any bear. Some trunks had been stripped bare, as if something had scraped them raw. The air smelled faintly of iron, and I couldn't tell if it was in my head or if something had bled there recently. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the woods seemed to lean closer. I built a fire outside the cabin, the smoke curling upward like a frail signal for help. That's when I heard it, branches snapping, deliberate footsteps circling just beyond the firelight. I froze. I called out, my voice trembling. "Hello? Who's there?" No answer, just the crackle of the fire and then silence. I should have gone inside, but something about the quiet anchored me in place. Then I heard a low sound, almost like breathing, drawn out and ragged. It came from the tree line. I stared hard into the darkness, and for the briefest second, I saw two glowing points, red, like embers, hovering at the height of a man's head. When I blinked, they were gone. That night, I locked the cabin door and kept the lantern burning, but I couldn't sleep. The walls felt too thin, the windows too exposed. Every creak of the wood sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind carried with it a smell I couldn't place, sweet, rancid, like rotting meat masked by pine. And somewhere out there I knew, those red eyes were still watching me. The next morning, I tried convincing myself it was all in my head. Maybe a pair of animal eyes had caught the firelight. Maybe the smell was just something rotting in the woods. I almost believed it until I stepped outside. Around the cabin, the soil was covered in prints, not boots, not hooves. Something in between, long, narrow impressions that ended in sharp points, like claws. They circled the cabin again and again, stopping just beneath my window. My stomach turned. I packed my things that day, determined to leave, but the road back down the mountain was nothing but dirt and switchbacks, and a storm had rolled in overnight. The trail was washed out, trees fallen across it. I was stranded. By afternoon, the forest grew unnervingly still again. No birds, no wind, just the low hum of pressure building in the air. I tried distracting myself, reading, eating, anything to ignore the dread crawling through me. But when night fell, the scratching began. At first, it was faint, like a branch dragged across the wood. Then it grew sharper, deliberate, scrape, pause, scrape. Moving along the outside walls of the cabin, my throat went dry. I whispered to myself that it was raccoons, maybe a bear. But bears don't whisper. Yes, whisper. That's when I realized the sound beneath the scratching wasn't just wind, it was a voice. Low, broken, dragging syllables I couldn't understand. The words weren't English, but they weren't human either. My lantern flickered, and in that heartbeat of near darkness, I felt something shift inside the cabin. The smell rushed in again. Wet fur and copper, stronger this time, almost choking. I held my breath, listening. There was no scratching now, no whisper. Just the sound of breathing, inside, with me. I turned slowly, every nerve screaming, and in the farthest corner where the light barely reached, I thought I saw a shape. Too tall to fit beneath the ceiling, its head bowed, antlers scraping the wood. Black fur matted against its body, and a face. No, not a face, a skull stretched thin over it, the sockets empty except for the faintest glowing red. I blinked, and it was gone. The lantern flared back to life, the corner empty. My hands shook so violently I dropped the light, shattering the glass. The fire hissed out, and I was left in the dark. I don't remember how long I stayed frozen on the floor. Minutes? Hours? When the first trace of dawn lit the cabin, I was still there, staring at the corner, praying I'd only imagined it. But when I finally stood, I saw the truth scratched deep into the wood by the door. Symbols, circles, jagged lines carved clean through the surface. They pulsed faintly, as if still warm, as if they hadn't been carved by hands at all. And just above the symbols, in clumsy letters that made my blood run cold, was one word: my name. I didn't leave the cabin that day. I couldn't. Every time I looked at the carvings by the door, the letters of my name seemed to dig deeper into the wood. I kept asking myself, how could it know me? The storm had blown past, leaving a gray sky and fog that swallowed the forest whole. I thought maybe I could run, make it down the mountain before nightfall, but every time I peered outside, the fog pressed closer, so thick I couldn't see 10 feet ahead. It felt alive, like it was waiting for me to step into it. By dusk, I knew I was trapped again. That's when the knocking began. It wasn't random. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Always at the same spot, the window by my bed. I couldn't look. I didn't want to see what stood there, but the glass rattled under the force. My chest ached with every strike, as if the sound itself was breaking me open. Then came the voice, clear this time. A rasp, low and guttural, dragging itself into words I could finally understand. Let me in. I pressed my hands over my ears, shaking, whispering no again and again. The air grew heavy, the smell of blood and rot filling every corner of the cabin. The lantern flame burned low, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls like grasping fingers. And then the door creaked. The lock I'd set trembled, metal bending against something stronger than me, stronger than the wood itself. I backed into the corner, clutching a kitchen knife that felt like nothing more than a toy. The symbols on the door began to glow again, faint at first, then brighter, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The lock snapped. The door didn't open, not all the way. Just enough for the fog to slip in, curling across the floor like pale fingers reaching for me. And through that gap, I saw it. The creature stepped forward, head bent to fit through the frame, antlers scraping the wood, those red eyes fixed on me. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. Each step echoed inside me, my body paralyzed, my mind screaming. It lowered its skull-like face toward me, so close I could feel its breath, hot, wet, rancid. My knife slipped from my hands. It whispered again, softer this time, almost tender. You are mine. I don't remember what happened next. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe I ran. All I know is I woke up outside, on the trail at the edge of the forest, the cabin far behind me. My clothes were damp with blood, not mine, I think. My name was carved into the skin of my arm, shallow, but enough to scar. I made it down the mountain. I told myself I'd never go back. But last night, outside my apartment window, I saw them again, 2 faint, red eyes in the dark. It followed me, and it will follow you. And 2, the Appalachians don't let you go. They send something with you.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.